I'm in the business of search marketing, and my team is absolutely amazing at it. Our clients thrive because of quality of service that they get from us. Yet I'm the first to admit that if you want to absolutely crush it with your business, take it into 8 figures, $10 million plus in revenue, and then some, you will have to get good at brand marketing, something that I am not expertly at. Because of that, I invite guests like Laura Ramos James, who is a practicing attorney, who is a CEO of her law firm, and who is incredibly successful at brand marketing. Listen to her story and how she deployed it from the very onset of her law firm and how she has absolutely thrived with her brand marketing while spending very little on getting all of that business. Enjoy the episode, and as always, learn from it and implement in your business whatever you see valuable. And a lot of her advice is just so spot on. Enjoy the episode. Hi there. I have a small but really meaningful favor to ask you. I watch at the stats on our YouTube channel and Spotify channel, wherever most people listen and watch our podcast. And I see that over 80% of everybody who listens to it regularly is not a subscriber. I'm asking you to subscribe to this channel. And the reason for that is my mission and the mission of my team is to help as many small law firm owners to learn how to transform their law firms into better businesses, and so they in turn enjoy better lives. When you hit subscribe button, you tell these platforms that this is content worth listening, worth viewing, and they in turn will show it to many other small law firm owners and hopefully help me fulfill our mission of helping them create a better business and enjoy better lives. So would you please do me this favor? It would mean the world to me, and hit the subscribe button. And my promise to you is that I will continue to work hard at creating good content with practical ideas that help you and your teams grow better law firms. Thank you. Welcome to Grow Law Podcast. I have an amazing guest with me here today, Laura Ramos James. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So you have an amazing story from being bit by a German Shepherd when I think you were 3 years old, and your parents were accused that actually it was somehow their fault, to remembering that and becoming a personal injury attorney a few years later. You're still very, very young.
Thank you.
To then practicing on the defense side and seeing the evils, and I'm putting it in air quotes in case you're not watching this video, but hearing this podcast on Spotify or wherever else you may be hearing, and then deciding to switch side and representing the injured. I love your story, but what I really love, where I think it would be incredibly valuable for other law firm owners to hear your voice and your thoughts on, is that you've built a sizable brand for someone who's only been in your own law firm practicing business for less than 8 years. It is a formidable brand in Texas where you're based, and you've done it in a different way than most. And I want you to talk about that. Tell the story of how you came up with this authentic brand marketing, which most people do not understand what it is, do not care to invest into it. Yet here you are thriving because you've executed with excellence in that specific arena, which is, again, unknown to most.
Yeah, thank you for those words. You're very familiar with my story. I'm an immigrant. I was born and raised in Mexico. I don't know if you mentioned that part, but it has played a big role, because when I started practicing law, there were, and actually later in the practice, there were different moments that rubbed me the wrong way in seeing how attorneys and law firms sometimes gave legal services to communities, like immigrant communities, Spanish-speaking communities, that were of lesser quality than those that they gave other, English speakers. And that was, probably not with evil intent, but just by nature of being understaffed by Spanish speakers. And, they would have a staff member, they would have no attorney who spoke Spanish, even though they would market to Spanish speaking communities. They would have a staff member return phone calls, translate between attorneys and clients, and then sometimes even prepare the clients for deposition. And that caused delays in the communication, frustration, misunderstandings, and then ultimately skepticism by the clients. And so that was one of the things that kind of lit a fire in me of wanting to do things differently. And I didn't quite know at the time what that would look like, but when I started my firm, my story is like many entrepreneurs, I went out with not a whole lot of money and didn't have any staff, didn't have an office. This is before the pandemic. It wasn't common to work virtually or remotely, but I didn't have any of that. I have a very, very modest marketing budget, and I really needed to make it last. It was $20,000 that I had to use for the entire year in marketing. And also with that budget, I was supposed to create this website from scratch. So little by little, I started piecing together a strategy that was going to be aimed at essentially reaching those people that I knew my story and my background would resonate with and who I could be uniquely fitted to serve. And to find them and to help that story get there, to get in front of them, I couldn't afford a billboard. I couldn't afford radio or TV ads. So to get in front of them, I went to where they were. And they were back, several years ago. Before I started the law firm, I joined different groups starting on Facebook groups. Mexicanas in Austin was one of them. Latinas in Austin was another one. Small Business Austin. We're headquartered in Austin. And so I would interact with members, and I would see a lot of misinformation being exchanged. And so I would correct it. I would tag my law firm when I would see opportunities for my law firm to help. And then I would create content and educational resources and share them. Me, zero money. But because I had already worked at another law firm, helping essentially build a law firm, I had the mentality that brand equity was important and that it was important for those potential clients to know me and to be exposed to me rather than only focus on lead generation with my budget. Because if any channel that I spend my very, very small budget on went under or disappeared, I was really going to be screwed. So that's one of the things that I did. Reached out to nonprofits.
Before you go to the next one, let's expand on what you just said, because I'm picturing somebody who is listening to that and they're like, oh, Facebook groups. How do you start that conversation? You join the group and you're like, hi, my name is Laura and I'm a personal injury attorney. If you or someone you know, you do not want to do it, that would be very inauthentic. And that would feel like you just came there to sell. And I think for most people, the question would be like, how do you start that? Like, how do you introduce yourself? And how do you continue to be engaged within a group, whether it is ethnic group or any other type of group, right? Without actually being salesy or markety for that matter. And I'm a marketer, but like that type of marketing would be awful if you just came in and said like, this is what I do.
100%. And what a great question. Because I've shared this before, not putting myself in the audience's shoes. To me, it's common sense because I did it. But truly, I joined the groups not because I wanted to get business from there, but because I was a similarly situated person, like Mexican women in Austin. I'm a Mexican woman in Austin. So I want to find out if there are members who, maybe ladies who want to get together monthly for breakfast, or they have a recommendation for a trustworthy plumber, things like that. So to ask genuine questions, but through that engagement, I would see certain members encouraging each other and giving false information, not intentionally, but saying, for example, oh, if you get in a wreck, you need to sign those papers like right away, send them back. They'll send you a check and it's great. And then not knowing that, they were actually giving such terrible advice, I would jump in and say, hey, Laura here, I'm a personal injury lawyer. We don't advise that you guys do that. This is why. And little by little, I started spotting opportunities to share, to spread knowledge genuinely and to share, certain things that I knew that, for example, if a plumber, if I was saying like, hey, my apartment's flooded, I'm doing this, a plumber may jump in and say, hey, don't do that. Kind of like that. It came from a genuine place of seeing misinformation. And it escalated in that I started seeing, for example, if someone would say, oh, I was in a wreck. Does anybody know a personal injury lawyer? I would say, hey, I am a personal injury lawyer, would be happy to help you. I started seeing that those Facebook groups actually were leading to potential clients. So I figured this is a genuine opportunity. I found out who the group owners were. And then I connected with them doing collaborations and sharing videos, informational videos where they would say, for example, hey, there's this topic that has been brought up in this group, but apparently, that's not how a lawyer would advise that you handle it. I have Laura here today. She's going to share, yada, yada. Or they would have, for example, monthly gatherings or weekly gatherings. And they would go and introduce themselves and just say, hey, I am so-and-so, I'm a housekeeper, or I'm so-and-so, I'm an esthetician. And then I would say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm a personal injury lawyer. And, the people who were not there were the people on the billboards. So when whoever I met, the groups would vary between 7, 8 people to like 30, 40 people.
Small groups.
Small groups. And whoever I met would hire me, right? They wouldn't hire the billboard person because now they've met a lawyer, in person.
Yeah, because familiarity breeds trust.
Absolutely.
And whatever you see on the billboard, if you don't know someone, the billboard is great. But if you know someone, the billboard becomes irrelevant.
That's exactly right.
So it's really interesting. I just want to use an analogy to what you said. So the way that you approach these groups was like you're going to a backyard party. You do not know almost anyone there, or maybe you do not know anyone there. And instead of coming up to them and saying, hi, I'm Laura, I'm a personal injury attorney, you just hung out and you had some conversations. If anybody said like, man, my husband got into a wreck and we're talking to this lawyer and something doesn't make sense, you're like, oh, well, I can just answer a couple of questions, educate you a little bit. And they're like, oh, this is very interesting. Do you have a business card? Instead of the opposite scenario would be networking events where everyone is there to do their 30-second pitch. Hi, my name is Sasha Burson. I'm a marketer with Grow Law. And do you need help with SEO? Like, no, right? So you didn't do that. You did the former.
Yes, but you know what? It's actually kind of a hybrid because at these groups, it's a little bit in between in that if you go to a backyard party, people aren't going around introducing themselves or like they don't stop the party so everyone can, say their name and what they do. But at these groups and, the gatherings that they would have, they do. Usually because absolutely nobody knows each other. So it's like at least say who you are, where you're from and what do you do. Very simple. Different than the networking where you do give the pitch and you hand out your business cards and things like that.
Yeah, that makes absolutely perfect sense. I love it. And another thing that you brought up there, if you, Mr. or Mrs. Law Firm owner, thinking about this when you're thinking, well, I'm not Mexican, I'm not in South Texas, I'm not. Like, how do I find my groups? Right? It's actually simpler than you think. If you have any interests. If you don't, it's a problem. If you're just super bland, it's a real problem. But if you have any interests, if you belong to a religious organization, church, synagogue, whatever it may be, right? If you have any interest, golf, boating, whatever it may be, right? Like you can join groups where you have shared interests and birds of feather flock together, right?
1000%.
They will like you a little bit more than the guy on the billboard because you are a boater, you are a golfer, you are a Catholic, you're a Protestant, you're a Jew, you're something, right? And so are they.
That's exactly right. You go by your identity, what makes you unique. And if you're a dad, a veteran, an athlete, those groups are your client hubs. That's where you find, because of exactly what you said, that community and those groups breed trust. Yep. And people like you a little better. It's easier to close on leads like that.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so what's the next thing that you did? In addition, not instead of, I understand that you started building up different marketing channels because it shouldn't be one thing. It should be multiple things.
Yes. So the other important one, and I do want to mention from those Facebook groups that, to probably if I didn't know my own story, I would think, little Facebook groups, little gatherings, what can that amount to? In the first year of business, I acquired 100 cases. I
Through
got
Facebook
one
groups.
of those. No, it was the different channels, and I'll mention those, but they contributed. I got one of the cases that I got was a multi-million-dollar case. I got several 6-figure cases, and through Facebook, I did get several 6-figure cases that came from those, quote unquote, little groups. But the other platform that I used is,
Let me
yeah.
ask you another question, just to help people frame their minds over this. How much time did you spend on those Facebook groups? Were you there full time?
No, I wasn't there full time because at the start of the business, I was everything else full time.
Mm-hmm.
I was the lawyer, I was the paralegal, I was the cleaner, I was the errand runner. So what I would do is I would just check social media every here and again and reply to comments. And if they had, a monthly gathering or a weekly gathering, then I would go to those. But if I had to measure, how many hours, it wasn't more than 4 or 5 hours a week that I would spend
Okay.
between replying to comments and, attending the gatherings, putting together educational videos and things like that.
That is very, very helpful. And here's why. So let's say it was 4 hours, and let's say that you were there 48 weeks a year. Because we all get sick, there are holidays, there are vacations, etc. So we're going to round it up, and let's say that in the first year, you invested about 200 hours into those groups. And I assume that you kept on investing into those groups because that familiarity just kept on building more and more trust. So
Absolutely.
200 hours per year, and guesstimate how much business did you get out of those groups that year one? You said multiple six-figure cases.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it probably was anywhere between 8 to 10 6-figure cases. Yeah.
Okay, so $1 million?
Probably around. Yeah.
Got it. $1 million total, and you got 33% out of that?
For the ones that settle before
Mm-hmm.
litigation, right? If it was lawsuit, which I'm very litigation led and very, basically most of the stuff we do is litigation, 40%. And then here's the other beauty about it. No referral fee, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get those cases.
This is exactly where I was going with this. Because I'm like, you may be thinking, oh my God, it's 200 hours per year. But I'm going to say that this 200 hours per year one, that was probably worth, let's call it $500,000 in revenue. If you were waiting for referrals to come in, for you to generate that, and many referrals will not be six-figure cases because those that are referring would want to keep those cases to themselves. They would be smaller cases. You would have to give them 25, 30, 35% of whatever it is that you would be getting.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is the highest case acquisition cost. It is a no-brainer that if you can invest 200 hours a year into building a community that likes and trusts you, and you breed that familiarity, and that community keeps on growing authentically, right? It's not limited to those 5, 10, or 35 people in those groups because they know each person knows 10 other people, and they know, and they know, and they know. And this is how you get to the point where you're very well known in your geographical market.
Exactly. Exactly. And when you say you, right, it's if you're going the route of trying to build a brand, which is the route I wanted to go, it means that you scale to the point where it doesn't have to be like actually you, Laura, replying to comments, going to the gatherings. As the law firm grew, other team members would join their, the gatherings and would reply to the comments and whatever you have. But it would be all to advance the law firm, right? That the law firm was present in the groups.
Yeah. I like to think and I like to say that your freedom comes from your org chart. That's it. So the larger you grow, the better your org chart looks, the less you have to do.
Yeah.
That's really it. Okay. So Facebook groups, you have an in, you're attracting cases. What's next?
A little spin-off of the Facebook groups is I started to do the work of like, okay, I see this. I'm identifying or I'm defining my identity, the identity of the brand. And, we're present in the Hispanic community in like women groups and things like that was another subgroup that didn't necessarily need to be. It was a social group, didn't necessarily need to be a Facebook group, but it operated similarly. And from that, there were Llama, which is another spin-off that I would call it.
Is that a professional group? Attorney
Yes.
moms?
Yeah, attorney moms. It's really, it's a nonprofit, but there's like a couple of spin-offs that are attorney mom groups that are also on Facebook and kind of, advance the same goal. But once call it Facebook groups, social groups, then nonprofits was the other platform that I guess I started to become interested in, because some of by nature of engaging in these Facebook and social groups and learning, what people were actually like real people saying what their problems were, construction workers that had no idea they had workers' compensation rights, or, different things like that, like small business owners that had barriers to success. I started to research nonprofits and see how I can be of service and how I can extend, share educational resources. So I would offer to speak at their events or to put together educational resources and share those. And, once I went there and they would see me in person, they knew nobody was paying me to be there. They would hear me speak and see, if I was talking about a case, and they would hear the emotion in my voice, or, just me as a real human. I think that made the difference. Then, like you were saying, if you don't know anyone, then the billboard does it. But if you know someone, and someone who's actually giving you something for free, that was like legal knowledge about workers' compensation and injuries at work and things like that, that became another platform. And I say platform, but they were really collaborations, because I was helping communities that I was very passionate about helping. And eventually, I would volunteer at events and things like that. And those things also started to have momentum to where I got invited to become a board member. And yet again, that led to the law firm being present without me having to continue to, to have the same time commitment and investment throughout the years.
Makes sense. So from there, obviously came a lot more referrals.
Exactly.
And then?
And then more and more. No, and then, well, the other important platform, but of course there's expense to it, is just your
Time.
attorney referrals, right? Like investing in the, learning productive networking with other professionals, but also especially other attorneys that would refer cases.
And what was the next channel that you started developing to attract even more business?
From the beginning, we have done some paid advertising on, on your Google and like your Facebook and things like that. That always has been a little bit of one of the, like, we call it like a multi-channel approach. That has remained. Of course, as we've grown, we've invested more. We've added a couple of other outlets. Like we have a TV ad campaign now, but it's something that we didn't have in the beginning. We do lead generation now as well, something we didn't do in the beginning.
What kind of lead generation?
It's essentially an agency that sells the leads.
Okay,
that
got
type.
it. So you purchase leads. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's probably, I don't think I'm forgetting anything.
You do a lot of social content across 4 platforms.
Yes, we do organic SEO. Like we do a lot of content by, just video and, and blogs, but we've expanded to like LinkedIn and other written content. So yeah, definitely do our fair share of content creation.
Yeah, there's a ton of content that's made by you, actually. It's mostly your face across 4 different social platforms. I don't think you do any SEO, because I always check up on those things and I'm like, there's no SEO. If you're paying for it, stop paying for it, because whatever is getting done, there's like nothing working.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Yeah, all of your search traffic, or overwhelming majority of your search traffic, comes to you because of branded search. Like people know your name, they search you up, they end up on your website. So if you're spending a dime on your SEO, like after we finish recording this podcast episode, call your marketer and say, buddy, I've lost a lot of money with you, because it's like there's nothing.
Not a lot. I'm not sure that we do that anymore, but I know at some point we've explored that.
Yeah, it's a very powerful channel, and here's why. Whenever I see somebody who has done so much personal branding, I always think, and I'm an entrepreneur. I've built and sold businesses before. I know that every beginning has an end, and I always think about what happens if tomorrow you cannot work. Is your brand sellable? If your brand is built on your personal brand, the discount that your brand is going to take is going to be huge, because like think about another attorney acquiring your law firm where you can no longer work, where you can no longer network, where you can no longer produce videos, whether you choose to. You may choose to tomorrow just wake up and you're like, I want to become a missionary. I don't want to do this anymore. Like things happen sometimes, a life-changing event, or unfortunately illnesses often force people out of their line of work. That happens, right? So I always think about like, what's the discount that your firm is going to take because you are the brand?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, I have a similar problem, where I'm the chief content creator for Grow Law. So my partner and I kick around the idea, like, what happens to valuation of this business if Sasha is no longer here? And we're curious about the value of our business every single year. We want to know what it's worth, right? And by the way, it's a very similar valuation for those of you who may be interested in what their law firm is worth. It's a very similar valuation model for any service business, including law firms and marketing companies, because it is a service business. So if you're doing substantially under $2 million in EBITDA, which is basically like pure profit, pre-tax, right? You're going to get 3 times EBITDA. So if you do like $1 million in net profit, not your personal income, but like profit, you're going to get $3 million. If you do close to 2 million or above, you're going to get 5 times that profit, right? So, and there's always that question, like if somebody was buying your law firm because you couldn't work anymore, you decide that you don't want to, like what is the discount that they're going to apply to that valuation because you are the brand.
Right. Exactly.
And that's a scary thought to a lot of people. And then they start thinking, oh, I should get a disability insurance and other things. Because many of us become our brands, right? And
absolutely. Absolutely.
That's why we want to think about it like, well, do our other channels work as well? Right? Not just the stuff that we do ourselves. Although I absolutely love what you have done. Like love it. And I think maybe your next iteration is to get other attorneys at your firm, which I think beside you, there are 4 other attorneys working there, making them marketing machines as well. If you haven't already explored that, have you?
We have, and actually there was probably a couple years ago, we were really trying very hard. You can see the change like 2 years from now, how we had more videos, more involvement. And I mean, I think like with anything, if you love it, it shows. And they love being lawyers. They don't necessarily love creating content. I love creating content. But we definitely now are again starting to, like, we just didn't see any success in that. The videos that were productive were not those. But again, we are very mindful that if I were to go away, Ramos James Law on its own is going to have to rely on other channels that are not necessarily branded content. But I will say, like, the presence in the community, which still continues to give us, thankfully, give back, is the law firm. I'm known as associated with the law firm, but in the community, it's known that it's not a one woman show.
Yeah, that's awesome. And also another thing to consider, and this is how we now hire our advisors, is we want to know when we're talking to them if they like being on video, if they feel very comfortable being on video, right? Because that should be like everyone at your business who is client facing, not everyone, but a lot of people, right? They should be content creators. So like next Tuesday, a week from today, I'm recording an episode of this podcast with one of my associates. And she's going to do some of these podcasts herself. And we're going to expand. She's going to become a content creator. And this becomes a requirement now that we want people who are good on video. So when we are interviewing them, I'm like, have you done any content? Like, can I see your channels? Are you good on camera? Because
that's excellent.
Truly, that becomes part of your ecosystem. And if it's all reliant on one person, there's that valuation hit that you may take.
Yeah, absolutely.
Laura, where do you see your business in 5 years?
That's a great question. Business in 5 years, I hope that it doubles. I am a mom of 2 small kids, and of course things don't go all in a straight line for those of us that are having those these challenges. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm committed to growth, but without, I've never been like, oh, I just want to grow and I want to, I have this mentality that I want to be free. I want to delegate it all. I have read a lot about, like, oh, you have to get comfortable with like 80% is good enough and like things like that I'm just frankly not there yet. I'm not comfortable with that. I am a perfectionist and I want things, I want excellent legal services. I want excellence at everything. And it's hard, I don't necessarily value just growth at all cost. I want to continue to grow in a measured pace where we are not sacrificing quality, where we're not having to worry about, oh my gosh, we have this terrible, we have 5 people that we've hired who are just, who are just terrible or, not a good fit or whatnot. So I think, I know I'm aware of the I guess the tools that exist to try to control and measure that. But at the same time, I mean, my personal experience has been that I enjoy being involved and kind of taking it at our own pace. So double the growth would be.
I am virtually certain that you will double in less than 5 years. And let me tell you why. You started just under 8 years ago at zero. Today, you have a sizable org chart, and I understand approximately what it costs to run your size of organization. Over these less than 8 years, you have grown your business by more than 25% per year. Is that fair to say?
That's fair.
So if in the next 3 years, you're going to increase the size of your business on annual basis about 25%, in 3 years, you're going to be double of where you are today, not in 5. 25% growth is very manageable. 100% of growth is very hard to manage, and it requires special skill set for the manager, the CEO, to see that kind of growth, because it usually breaks the existing systems, and you need to be continually updating your systems as you grow at that pace. But 25%, in 3 years, you're like, that was a piece of cake. I kid you not. That's all it takes, 25% a year, 3 years straight. In 2 weeks, I'm going to have an amazing gentleman on this podcast whose name is Cameron Harold. He wrote a book called Double Double, which talks about how to double the speed with which you double your size of business. It has nothing to do with law firms, but it could be applied to just about any business. I highly recommend it. He's a really smart guy. I met him at the conference 10, 11 years ago. I read his book more than once. Nice. It is a very, very, very impactful book. But I don't think you want to double the speed with which you're doubling in size. But if you could get to from where you are to where you want to be instead of in 5 years and 3 years, I think you're going to say like, oh, I did good.
Yeah, I did. Absolutely.
I did good. And before we hit the record button, I asked you what percentage of your time is now dedicated to practicing law versus managing business. And we talked about you spending about 25% on actual cases now, where I'm sure 8 years ago when you started was much higher percentage, not 100%, but much higher percentage, and probably a lot more work hours. And maybe we'll do this podcast again in 3 years, and you'll be like, oh, Sasha, it's close to zero now. Because I am a CEO, true CEO of a much larger law firm, and my time is much more valuable getting those right people in the right seats and them doing this and this and this and this and this. And I've graduated to just a different level, and I'm solving different level problems now.
Let's hope so. We'll see.
We don't know each other very well, but I'm kind of certain in you right now. And I don't say this lightly just because you are doing those things while having 2 little kids. And the effort that you put into building this is, I've interviewed a lot of very successful attorneys on this podcast, some with slightly smaller businesses, some with significantly larger businesses. But it's the way that you've done it, which makes me very certain that doubling from where you are today is going to be a piece of cake.
That means
congrats on your success.
Thank you so much.
100%. Love it. Thank you so much for being part of this and sharing your insights and your journey.
Thank you for having me.